I welcome the Severe Fetal Impairment Abortion Amendment Bill introduced by Paul Given. His bill is in line with the motion I brought before the Assembly on the 2nd of June last year, as it seeks to amend one element of the Abortion Northern Ireland No. 2 Regulations 2020, that is, Regulation 7(1)b, which allows abortion up to birth in circumstances when, if the child were born, it would suffer from such physical or mental impairment as to be seriously disabled. At present, Regulation 7 covers all disabilities, those referred to as fatal and non-fatal. This allows for abortion in the very difficult cases where a baby has a disability which is likely to be fatal either sometime before or shortly after birth. Under Paul's proposed bill, there will be no grounds for an abortion on the basis that the baby has a non-fatal disability. As I said in the debate last June, in Great Britain, the equivalent section of the 1967 Abortion Act, Schedule 1(1)d, has been interpreted to allow for abortion up to term for conditions such as Down syndrome, cleft palate and club foot. In England and Wales, we know from the abortion statistics that abortions on the grounds of cleft palate, cleft lip and club foot, all conditions that can be addressed through surgery, are deemed to meet the threshold of seriously disabled and do happen. In 2018, in England and Wales, 3,269 abortions were undertaken because of fetal abnormality, known as Ground A cases. The commentary on the statistics says, quote, "It is likely there is still a significant undercount presented in the Ground A notification tables in this publication, so overall figures related to Ground A notifications should be treated with caution." Of these figures to be treated with caution were 618 abortions where Down syndrome was identified. 18 of these were conducted after 24 weeks, the gestation limit for other types of abortion. It is highly likely that a similar interpretation will be adopted here in Northern Ireland. Regulation 7 is the only ground where the decisions are made based on a diagnosis made in relation to the baby, and it allows for abortion up to birth. Regulation 7(1)b of the abortion regulations affords greater protection to viable human beings in the womb who are deemed to be without a disability than it affords to viable human beings in the womb who have non-fatal disabilities. It is clearly saying that viable human beings with non-fatal disabilities and conditions are worthy of less protection under the law than viable human beings who are deemed to be able-bodied. And this in turn clearly says that people with Down syndrome or other disabilities are of less value than people without disabilities. This is completely unacceptable in 2021. Again, I ask, as I did then, why would we ever countenance the disability discrimination that the Westminster Parliament was persuaded to vote for 30 years ago in 1990, before the advent of disability discrimination legislation and before the UK became a signatory to the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities? I'm sure members know the lovely Heidi Crowder. She's a brave young woman with Down syndrome. She describes the current law as offensive and hurtful. This law is not only offensive, it is regressive and discriminatory. In the last 30 years, Northern Ireland, like every jurisdiction in the UK, has introduced legal protections for individuals with disabilities. These laws aim to foster equality and ensure that individuals with disabilities are treated equally to everyone else. The Disability Discrimination Act 1995 protects the rights of persons with disabilities. The Northern Ireland Act 1998 placed a statutory duty on public authorities to have due regard to the need to promote equality of opportunity for persons with a disability. In 2006, the Disability Discrimination Northern Ireland Order further amended the Disability Discrimination Act 95, including a requirement that public authorities, quote, promote sensitive attitudes towards disabled persons. In 2009, the UK as a whole ratified the UN Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. These laws reflect the fact that every person regardless of their ability or so-called disability, is of value and worth. This bill seeks to illustrate that those with disabilities are equal to everyone else, inside or outside the womb. I would also like to remind members that in 2017, the UN Committee, in their report on Great Britain and Northern Ireland, stated, "The Committee is concerned about perceptions in society that stigmatise persons with disabilities and about the termination of pregnancy at any stage on the basis of fetal impairment. The Committee recommends that Great Britain amends its abortion law accordingly." Make no mistake, Regulation 7(1)B mirrors the very same legislation the UNCRPD rejected. It fundamentally perpetuates stereotypes against individuals with disabilities. In our deliberations today, we also have to bear in mind the cross-border dimension when considering the impact of this particular regulation. It seems from the explanatory memorandum of the current regulations that cross-border considerations rather than CEDAW were the primary consideration in Westminster, wanting to free itself from dealing with women from Northern Ireland who travelled to England for abortions. The government seems to forget, as everyone it suits them, however, that there is another border. It is my understanding, Mr. Speaker, that in the Republic of Ireland, a woman cannot get an abortion up to birth on the basis of Down syndrome or any other non-fatal disability. These regulations mean we have a situation where women from the Republic of Ireland are able to travel across the border to here to obtain an abortion on the basis of any serious disability right up to term. These regulations may have an impact on our neighbouring jurisdiction and the way in which people in the Republic view disability. I'm aware some TDs have already expressed real concern about the impact on attitudes to disability within the Republic. If we do not pass this bill, we are signalling to every person with a disability that their life is valued differently to others. Hannah Wilson, a young woman with Down syndrome from County Fermanagh, points out, "I was very sad when the law was explained to me. It feels so wrong. The law should not treat some people differently from others." Hannah's mother, along with the mothers of Eliab, Nathan, Aaron, Darren and Sarah, and many other parents from Northern Ireland, all agree that their children should be treated as being of equal value to any other child. With Hannah's parents sharing, quote, "We are angered by the very notion that a life, however different, is viewed by some as expendable because it is deemed as less than perfect." Mr. Speaker, it is also important that we consider the kind of society we are creating for pregnant women and mothers. Do we want them questioned as to why they will not terminate their pregnancy, as was the experience of one mother recently? Or do we want to create a society where people with disabilities are protected and valued? This bill is about protecting women. Women like Emma Miller, to whom Mrs. Barton has already referred, who at 24 years old described feeling under pressure to abort her daughter Jamie throughout her pregnancy. Emma states that she and her husband, quote, "were offered 15 terminations, even though we made it clear that it wasn't an option for us. They really seemed to push and really seemed to want us to terminate," end quote. Doctors made it very clear to her, even at 38 weeks pregnant, that if she changed her mind on the morning of the induction, to let them know, because it wasn't too late. So until her baby had literally started travelling down the birth canal, she could still terminate her pregnancy. We're trying to protect women like Rachel Muse, who describes how she was pressured to consider having a late-term abortion at 7 months pregnant, despite previously stating repeatedly that she would never terminate for Down syndrome. She describes herself as having PTSD as a result of this experience, saying, quote, "Being forced to imagine someone killing Betsy nearly destroyed me," end quote. This bill will protect women like these so that they do not have to fight for the right of their child to live, so that they will not feel pressured by medical professionals. This bill will uphold their child's right to life. Last June, I quoted Lord Shinquin. His words are just as relevant now as they were then. he said, "I utterly reject this medical mindset that clings to the idea that a disabled baby is a medical failure to be eradicated through abortion. I beg no one for my equality. I know I have as much right as anyone to be alive." The charity Disability Rights UK, commenting on Lord Shinquin's bill, said, "Fundamentally, it is about equality. Wherever Parliament sets the number of weeks after which abortion is not permitted, it should be exactly the same, whether the pregnancy is likely to result in a disabled or a non-disabled child. All lives are equal." As I said last year, Mr. Speaker, we cannot and must not separate the regulations from the people to whom they would apply. Assembly members may not, on the one hand, promote equality for the disabled and with the other, vote to have them aborted. These positions are incongruous. Either those with disabilities are equal or they are not. If they are equal outside the womb, they are equal inside it. And to my mind, they are equal. And let us be clear. Without question, Regulation 7 unavoidably perpetuates stereotypes against individuals with disabilities. Any person with a disability looking at when an unborn baby can be legally aborted will recognise that their life is valued differently to others. As I conclude today, I want to remind the House of the words of Heidi Crowder last summer before the regulations were approved, when she said, "My life has as much value as anyone else's." She recently said, "This Northern Ireland law at the moment makes me feel less valuable." Heidi's previous intervention on this matter gave rise to a very moving piece on Sky News Australia. This reminds us that as we approach this subject today, we're not only being watched by our constituents and our neighbours in the Republic, but by other parts of the world. We now have an opportunity to change the law and uphold the rights of those born with a disability and at the pre-born stage of their life. Let us seize it with both hands. Because, in the words of one mother, the right to life of a person with Down syndrome should never be questioned simply because of a chromosomal variation. My daughter is meant to be here on this planet, and nobody has the right to suggest otherwise. This is the message that we must send to people with disabilities. It is that we value your life equally to those we describe as able-bodied. Mr. Speaker, none of us knows for how long we will be here, but for as long as I am, I will stand for the unborn and I will stand for the disabled. I shall certainly be supporting this bill, which gives effect to the motion I introduced last June and encompasses the Sinn Féin amendment to that motion. I would urge all members of this House to do likewise, and in so doing, send out the signal, loudly and clearly, that there is no place for disability discrimination in Northern Ireland in 2021, and that Northern Ireland continues to be a country where disabled people are valued. Thank you.